lot to get to quickly and let Frank take over, but I just wanted to give everybody a sense of what this project is. Morton Pennypacker is the man who created the Long Island collection, and he was a collector in the 1920s, covering all of Long Island material. And he acquired these papers from the Townsend family of Oyster Bay, and they were a prominent, prosperous merchant family. And these particular papers that we've been working with for over 4 years now, from the son of Robert Townsend. He's the fourth generation, and he was a merchant as well. And as it turns out, thanks to Mr. Pennypacker's research, he was a prominent member of George Washington's spy network out of New York called the Culper Spy Ring. So most people know these papers, if they know it at all, or Robert Townsend as Culper Jr. as a spy. But as you'll see, this project is so much more than that. This is really about giving people access to everyday life in New York from this particular project is 1773 to 1785. So it's just before the war, the whole 7-year occupation, and several years after. We're working with material now of Robert's, taking it beyond that into the federal period, towards the end of his life. But this particular project is very specific about the Revolution. And you'll see material, what people were buying, clothing, what they were drinking, eating, what was available. The names alone, it's just an amazing project. We've already helped somebody that was looking for somebody for years, serious research. With this project, because Frank's transcription of this into a computer database that's searchable, we were able to find that person in a minute or less, where they were, what they were doing, what they were buying, and that's just one example. I wanted to tell you a little bit about our methodology. The genesis of this is we knew we had this material, we cataloged it, and from time to time people would come in, and first thing we would say is, we're not experts on the Culper Spy Ring. And there's so much interest, and Frank started volunteering, and he started transcribing some account books. He said, why don't we focus on this? And he's done this, treated this as a job. Every day, at least 2 hours a day, he takes this material home and sits and diligently transcribes what's in front of you. And I just want to give you, this is the website we built, and this is truly a team effort. I mean, Frank is the heart and soul of this, but from myself editing this work and brainstorming, Gina, Andrea, Dennis, it's amazing what we've done with this. We do high-end digitization of this material, so we're protecting it for the long haul, transcribing it in legible, keyword searchable documents so people can find it on the internet, making appendices of names. You'll see, and it's all out there now on our website, each book is specific, and then at the bottom is a complete compilation. So if you're looking for specific years, time periods, you can click any of those. And I just wanted to close with one thing before I turn it to Frank. When people come into the Long Island collection, whether it's the schools for tours or anybody, we always convey to them, just remember that this stuff is interesting and it's cool, but just remember, it's absolutely relevant to today. And what Frank's going to explain to everybody is the mercantile system that was in place then. And that is happening to this day. It's back. I just heard about this, and I couldn't wait to tell Frank and Gina when I heard it on the news, that China is actively bringing back the mercantile system with Africa. So they're trading services, Chinese services, to African nations for their commodities. So nothing changes, and you will see that. And I just want to thank Frank for his friendship and his hard work, and we have a lot more to do, and we're enjoying every minute of it. Thank you.
I don't know, I still hope I can have a size 8 hat. I think it went to 12 at this point. All right, but, all right, we have a computer here, and I have a book with notes, and I'll try not to blow it. Okay, one of the things, I'm sorry, a little higher? Okay, is that better? Okay, great. When I started with the account books, various account books prior to Robert Townsend, and started doing the transcriptions, I realized there were a lot of things that were in these books. I had no idea, no concept, no understanding. They were talking about different rates of exchange in different colonies. And so for pretty much every hour that I did a transcription, I must put in an hour to 2 hours just in research. It just so happened that the research books that I've been purchasing over the last 4 or 5 years, now I have a complete set, so every time I want to go to get something, I pull it off the shelf and there it is. But the amount of information that I've got from this is that the financial systems and the economic systems that were available in working in colonial America, I thought were going to be pretty much not too sophisticated, pretty much plain. But as I went through this, the financial systems and the economy itself was dynamic. It was extremely sophisticated. So much so that over the number of years researching a lot of the aspects of it, I've made a list of a number of items that I found most interesting through that research. The first is the access to currency exchange rates for not only the international trade, but for the trade within the colonies. Because in the colonies, a lot of the individual colonies themselves have different values for the same currency that everyone has. Everything was in pounds, shillings, and pence. That in itself, I had to spend a lot of time on learning all about the English currency system. But even with the same dollars and cents, for example, that we have, there are dollars in Canada, there are dollars in the United States, but they have different values. In the colonies themselves, all with the shillings and the pence and all the pounds, they were all different currency values itself. So, but they did have access to currency exchange rates for the colonies and for international trade. And just let me get something. One of the first books I bought was Money and Exchange in Europe and America. And this is a book that I can go to and will give many, may I put this up here? That's good, Steve. The various pages will give the exchange rates for, let's say, the New York colony to London. It'll give New York colony to Lisbon. It just goes on with millions of numbers here. That makes me so happy. Okay. As a matter of fact, the other night, my wife could not get to sleep. And so I said, I want you to read the first 3 pages. And after 3 pages, out like a light. So that's, but it really helped me understand the currency system at the time. Another book that I found very interesting that helped me with most of the commodities of the time was this book, The Wholesale Commodity Prices in the United States from 1700 to 1861. For these people that have extreme problems in getting to sleep. Just reading the first page will knock them out. So, but I love these books, and I don't fall asleep while I read them. But that, to me, was a very big item where the exchange rates were available. Customers had access to credit. Now, in the colonial period, there were no banks. So, but commerce had to go along, and it went along smoothly by having all of the merchants act as bankers, so that anybody coming in to purchase any items would get pretty much a debit for that account. And when there was going to be payment made, there would be a credit in the other account, so that they would balance out. But people could go for about a year or so with a negative balance before they paid, without much of a problem, because it was a close-knit community. People were farmers. They're very much agricultural. And usually after the spring harvest, or at the fall harvest, rather, there would be money flowing, and certainly the payments would be made at that time. But the other thing is, there was very, very difficult getting currency. A lot of coins, silver coins, gold coins, especially in the early on days. But I'll cover just a little bit of that a little bit later, though. But that was book credit, and that made the world go around. There were insurance properties that would be insured by either Lloyd's of London or local insurance consortiums, where they would, without a problem, take on the international trade and pretty much insure the cargo that was going to many of the colonies, and as well as in Europe. One of the things, too, that I enjoyed seeing was the system of international payments. Well, because they didn't have the banking system, that a lot of the merchants wanted to, in fact, buy goods in Europe. This was a method where they could use accounts that wealthy merchants had. They go to the wealthy merchants and say, you have you have a lot of money over in London. I want to buy this product in London. I will buy from you a piece of that account that you have in London. And I'm simplifying this dramatically. And the merchant would say, the wealthy merchant would say, fine, but because it's in sterling currency, I have to convert that to New York currency. So I'd have to then find out how much I have to give this merchant, which was already I was getting a headache when I was reading all of this. But it just showed how complicated the system was, but yet how workable it was. And once the merchant, in fact, got the money that he would give to this other fellow who needed all of these goods, he would then contact his agent in London, and the agent in London, by notes and by orders, would then transfer the money to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer would then send the information and all of the goods to the other person in the colonies. This took about 3 months, 4 months to transact, but it was done, and it was done well, and a lot of business was done between England and the merchants in New York. There was also a bond issue, a treasury bond issue, issued in about 1780, and this bond was given to the people, the enlistees in Connecticut, and what it was adjusted for inflation. Now, this is interesting because the Treasury and inflation tips that we have today, inflation protective securities, is pretty much fashioned after this type of bond. Because what was given to the individual was the bond it had if you will, a bucket of commodities, and the commodities would have a value as of the day this bond was issued, and at the end of a year, if there was inflation and these particular commodities went up in value, the individual would get a greater value for that bond. And that's no different than the tips that we have today, which was a real big eye-opener. The issuance of currency, paper currency, as I'll go into a little bit later in the mercantile system, the colonies were not allowed to mint or print. They were not allowed to mint their own coins or print their own paper dollars. So in 1690, I believe it was, in Massachusetts, the one expeditionary force that went to Quebec to fight in the French and Indian Wars came back with very little in the way of treasure from Quebec because they lost the battle. But when they came back and they said, we want to get paid. Well, in those days, there wasn't very much in the way of treasury in the treasury. It was just pretty much empty. So one politician had a discussion with the other politician. They said, I know what we can do. Let's print money. And that was the beginning of the downfall of all the fiat dollars and all the other currencies around. But it did create a good solution for that particular problem. And they were called bills of credit. And it was supposed to work this way, where they would issue currency, paper dollars. And this currency is supposed to come back in the form of taxation. So at the end of, let's say, a year or 5 years or 3 years, all that paper would come back. It never happened because they had to issue more paper in order to meet the commitments that they had as a community. So this, again, is quite a big parallel to what's going on in today's world. Another area, since they had been able to create this fiat money, they opened land banks. Land banks would be focused all over the country, and mainly Massachusetts, New York. This is where it really was very popular. And what happened is they would give loans to farmers and business people so that they could use that money to generate a better economy. But when I take a look at all of this, I say to myself that, how did they do it? They didn't have computers. They didn't have spell check. All right? They didn't have Hewlett-Packard calculators. No iPods, iPads, anything like that. Not even Mont Blanc pens. I mean, so I don't know how they do it. This is how they did it. The turkey feather, all right? This was their way of writing. And they did an awful lot with that quill, that's for sure. So let me just go on now toward taking a look at a view of the economy and political issues at the time. The account books really cover many, many issues dealing with the finances and within the economies as I went through them. They used a form of accounting called single entry accounting. Single entry instead of double entry accounting was very, very simple. Excuse me. They had absolutely no guidelines, no standards to follow. A lot of these account books were used mainly to maintain who owes me how much, okay? That's how it worked. There were no taxes in those days, at least not until 1913. So they didn't have to come up with income statements or balance sheets or inventory lists or anything like that. So that was how that all basically developed. And the objective, of course, was to show the balances. But also on these account books, I kept seeing all kinds of foreign coins that were used in commerce itself. There was a lot of the Portuguese coins, the French coins, Spanish, English coins as well, and they all had to be put into the same value for purposes of accounting. So that, to me, was very confusing. You take a French coin, and now what you're doing is you're putting a label on it that was basically either a pound or a shilling or a pence. And as well as the currency values, you're also taking a look at the various names of people. Where did they live? What did they do? What did they buy? What was sold to them? A great source, at least for me, was also the Rivington Gazette. James Rivington had a Gazette, and he was, so far I know, as a loyalist. And he would be pretty much writing a lot of loyalist type of stories. He was an agitator, the whole thing. But he also had, what was really interesting to me, an advertisement section. I would go to the advertisements from 1773 to about early into 1775. And in there, I got all of the names of the corporations, what they were doing in the way of products, importing products. So Rivington also had an interest in a coffee house. And I believe Robert Townsend had a minor interest in that coffee house. And in that coffee house, they certainly would pick up a lot of good information for George Washington. And because Robert Townsend was a merchant, he was always going out onto the docks where these ships had all kinds of cargo from Europe, from England. So he could go walking around, going to various auctions in these ships, but yet take a good hard look as to who's out there, how many British ships are here, how many are British warships, how many troops are coming in. So that was all part of the scheme. And Rivington, even though everybody thought he was a loyalist, was part of that ring itself. As a matter of fact, when George Washington came through to Manhattan on his way back down to Virginia, he did stop at Rivington's shop. And from what was heard, was a lot of clanking of gold coins. So this loyalist was certainly a patriot. So not only now these prices of goods are important, because over a period from 1773 to 1785, I can get a very good look and see, yes, I should be looking at the time. I could get a very good look at the price points of all of these commodities and services, so that you could run pretty much an inflation analysis. You know, was there inflation? You know, and taking a look at many products such as molasses and wheat and corn, those were basically used in measuring inflation. So that to me is an opportunity that I would like to get into. Now, insofar as coinage is concerned, our first mint, the first mint was in Philadelphia, and it was approved by the government in 1792. It wasn't until 1793 that all of a sudden they started minting half cents and 1 cent pieces. After that, they would get into half dimes, etc. But there was very little American currency in circulation. It was mainly foreign coins. And foreign coins literally circulated in the economy all the way through 1857, when Congress finally demonetized foreign coins and only went on to accept the U.S. coins at that point in time. So I found that extremely interesting. I basically started collecting coins that circulated in the colonies, and it's very interesting to see how our silver dollar was pretty much modeled after the Spanish mill dollar itself. So that to me was a very nice experience. Now I wanted to also get into a money of account. Money of account, as you see up here, this is just a piece of a ledger statement of William Hill. And on the right-hand side, you see 19 in the corners of each. That was basically the account book, the journal page itself. When you see the 44 on that end of the line, that's page 44. I'm sorry, this is 19 is what they call the ledger statement page. 44 is the journal page where that account was first entered. So at least you can always track, I know the merchant can always track back as to where those entries were made. But the money of account, you see, is basically 3 items: pounds, shillings, and pence. That is now New York money. Okay, New York money, if that was, let's say, Pennsylvania money, those numbers, 2494, would have been different. So whenever I saw money of account or I saw New York money, I knew that if I was in the state or the colony of New York, I could then use that money freely, and everybody would understand what that value was. But that was a complication. That's something that took a while to truly understand how that could work. Okay, on that side, it shows by sales of tar. All right, so an individual comes in and gets a credit for over 24 pounds, and now has that credit. Now, what are you going to do with that credit? Well, the individual could buy things with that credit, or the individual could take that credit and take it in cash, or then take it in goods, but in this case, it's basically transferred to Mott and Bound, which is another merchant in the city, but it's on Richard Adams. So Richard Adams now is going to be credited with 24 pounds, 9 shillings, and 4 pence. And that could be just a book transfer from the Robert Townsend books to the Mott and Bound books, so that a debt could be paid for Richard Adams, and no money basically is transferred. And a lot of the merchants in that time period would make those kinds of transactions back and forth, and there was very little money, if anything, was transferred back and forth. So I found that, too, to be very interesting. Now, imaginary money or real money? Well, real money is really silver and gold coins. Imaginary money is is someone coming in and buying something, but not really paying anything for it yet. Okay, so that's like using a credit card without having paid it back yet. Here they're coming in, they're buying goods, and real money would be if when they came in with, let's say, commodities. I brought in a bushel of corn, for example, and it's valued as 10 shillings. I would get a credit of 10 shillings against my debt. And then obviously, a period of time, that debt has to be paid off. And in many cases, a lot of the merchants would, when the balances got real heavy, would have the customer come in and sign to it and say, yes, this is what I owe you, in case he has to take him to court and get that money. So it was a very interesting time period for that. I also put down, for everyone's information, because I know you all would love to learn about English currency, we have £1 is equal to 20 shillings, and 1 shilling is equal to 12 pence. So that was the basis. That was my first lesson in English currency. And that then would be used forward in all calculations, if you will, on exchange rates between the various colonies. But then again, when we take a look at, as Steve mentioned, the mercantilistic system that England had, on all its colonies, not only the American colonies, the American British colonies, but everywhere else. The objective is really to increase the manufacturing sector of England and increase their exports. England basically did not have any resources itself. The resources came from the colonies. The colonies basically would have to give England, if you will, ship England wood, boards, farm goods, things that they didn't have. And at that point in time, the colonies would get credits, but all of the goods that they got, basically they manufactured goods, brought the goods back to the American colonies, and the colonies had to pay for it in cash, not credit, not book transfers, not paper money, but silver and gold. So what would happen, because of the very first line, no mint or print, they weren't allowed to do any of that minting or printing of money, which Massachusetts obviously did. They were in the forefront of all of this. So the colonies basically did not have supply of coins that they really needed. So that didn't help. They had to go out literally and trade with the West Indies, treasure ships coming up from Mexico and South America with all kinds of coins, Spanish American coins, on the way back to England would stop in New York or would stop in any other port and purchase stores so they can make the trip across the ocean. That's where they got an awful lot of coins at that point in time. England would not export their silver coins because they too needed all the silver they could get, because they were trading with Europe and the Baltics, and there they had to come up with cash to pay all the balance of payments. So they wanted to enrich themselves by taking what they can from all of their colonies. And also they would take in, for example, they came to South Carolina and said, look, you have a lot of pitch and tar here and turpentine. These are all stores that we need to repair our ships. So we're going to help you develop this. We'll take it all, and you're going to get something for it, but quite don't know how much now. But their objective was to stop trading in Europe, turn around, take what we exported to them, use what they needed, and then re-export it to Europe. This way the balance of payments go up, their gold goes up, their silver contents go up, and they're a happy bunch of people. But of course, this was a little bit of a prelude to the revolution. The Navigation Acts, manufacturing was not allowed in the country, and nor was weaving. Could not weave because that's the woolen industry in England. So all of these were like little problems that developed over the years. The Navigation Acts are very simple. You will ship everything to us on British ships, British crews, British insurance, British taxes, British everything. And of course, this again was another real problem for the people in the colonies. But that gives you a little information as to what in fact was going on in the economy at that time. All right, this particular slide here is going to show you the various pieces of the Spanish mill dollar and the reales, the 8 reales, is the big coin at the bottom level. That was the silver coin that was really accepted worldwide. It was a trade coin. This coin found its way into the Orient in those days, found its way into the Baltics, it found its way everywhere, and was accepted. The reason why it was accepted is because the silver content in that coin was consistent. It was a true coin, number one. The weight never varied. So this was the coin to have in the world trade between colonies. And also, the coin was basically, okay, let's see. I'm sorry. Did I? Okay. I'll learn how to do this yet. The Spanish mill dollar. Okay, here I try to put down some dollars and cents, if you will. The sterling value for the silver dollar, because the British had to say, here's what I want you to value your coins at. Because when you pay us for the goods that you bought from us, we don't want to be taking undervalued money. We don't want to take weak currency. We want to take the real thing, the sterling dollar. So they said, your value of that mill dollar, that Spanish mill dollar, is going to be 54 pence, because we've calculated it all out. The mint in England did all kinds of tests on it and came out and said 4 shillings 6 pence or 54 pence. Now that you know that a pound is 20 shillings and a shilling is 12 pence, you know how to figure and calculate that now. So I'm not telling you anything new. But the thing is, New York said, no, we want a weak currency. That silver dollar is going to be 96 pence. And the reason why we want to do that, it was an old European custom to really devalue your money, to make it cheap compared to other currencies. So that what? So that your trade is really going to be picking up, and you're going to have more money come into your country. What did we hear on the news recently, lately? The dollar is strong. It's hurting the economy. Now, what do we hear about the Japanese economy and all the others? Oh, what we're going to do now is what the United States did. We're going to cheapen our currency. We want a weak currency so that we, in fact, can get more business. That's what they were doing here in the 18th century. I mean, what's new? Nothing very much. It's just the computer systems are new. So it's done a lot quicker. So then you have Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is 90 pence per Spanish mill dollar. Massachusetts was 72 pence. So if you looked at the pound sterling is 20 shillings, 240 pence. You have, you work out say 10 pounds, multiply that out by 10. So you come up with just pence, 2,400 pence. You divide by 54 pence sterling, and you get how much that 10-pound note is worth in sterling dollars and cents, $44.44. So you're going to, on the quiz, I promise you, no arithmetic, okay? So, but I thought that would be just interesting to get a, if anything, just a feel and flavor for what these people had to do. Okay, here, this is, again, just looking at the silver dollar, its parts. In the earlier days, when they had very little coins, next to nothing, they used to take the Spanish mill dollar and cut it in half. So you now have a dollar, and now you have a 50-cent piece. And then you cut the 50-cent piece in half, and now you have a quarter of the amount. So there you have two pence, there are 2 bits. That's 4 bits, that's 8 bits. So 2 bits gets you a shave and a haircut. Okay, that's basically it. And I just wanted to show you that quickly to give you, again, an understanding of that. Okay, now the cash books. Let's take a look at the account books itself. The cash book, no payments were ever recorded for cash. You came in, you bought something, you had a silver dollar or whatever, you paid for it. The merchant never put it down as to a sale. Usually they just take the products and walk out. The journal, or dailies sometimes they're called, will show sales that are entered chronologically each and every day. So that at the end of a day, okay, we start a new day, all the new sales are listed. Those sales could be either payments or a person buying something. It was like a mixed salad. There was a little bit of everything in this journal itself. But at the end of each month, the ledger was born, and all of those daily entries were now put into the ledgers, so that at the end of the month, every individual had his own account ledger, the pluses and the minuses. And the only reason why they wanted to do that is so that the merchant can, in fact, keep track of who owes him money and how much. So that is really the basis of all of that. Here I have showing Samuel Sackett. It's basically he is coming in and being paid that amount of money, 11 pounds, 9 shillings, 8 pence. The eight on top basically will give you an information as to the page of that particular journal. The 4 and the 3 you see there's Samuel Townsend, who got debited because he bought 12 pounds of tea at 4 shillings, 8 pence per pound. And he also had a bag that he bought, I guess, to put the tea in. And here we had also a cash that he wanted to pay his barber 12 shillings and 6 pence. So that is what you would be looking at each and every day if you were the running of the business. So what I wanted to do here was to show you the journal in detail. Here we have the journal showing April 20th, 1773. Mr. Sackett, he had 4 boxes of soap and boxes. He then definitely had to pay or being debited 11 pounds, 9 shillings, 8 pence. Here we have a Mr. William McAdam for 2 hogsheads worth of spirits. He was being charged 46 pounds, 5 shillings, and he also had 4. Those 4s represent the page of the ledger that their accounts are located. So now that Townsend has this, he can go from these pages, and here's a page 8, which shows a page Samuel Sackett. Sackett sold those items, and here he's being paid that amount of money. But you have to go to the ledger page 4 to get all of that information. And let's see here. So now the ledger would show ledger pages 4. Now A and B, usually they're side by side like we saw before. You had the debits and the credits. Here you see the individual on the bottom showing the credit where Townsend made a mistake. He had 2. When you have a 2, that means it's a debit. But when you have buy, that's a credit. Yeah, it took me about 3 months to understand that one. So here we have the actual ledger statement where we see Sackett being credited with that money. And you see that 3, that you can go back to page 3 of the journal. That's where you found it. And over here, we're paying him literally cash for that particular transaction. Now, in New York at that time, when the British were holding, the British were basically stationed in Manhattan, they got paid in silver every month. So Manhattan had not any real problem with getting currency because they had thousands of these British troops that were being paid. They had silver. They went out and they would help the economy dramatically at that time. So that was I just wanted to show you how that would work. Here, the glossary of terms. One of the things I wanted to do, I have a dictionary at home that was a dictionary of 1828 by Noah, what's the guy? Yeah. And the thing literally is this thick. And I've gone to that millions of times. Here what we've done is we've set up a glossary of terms. All the terms that are in these various account books that need explanation, we've set up an appendix showing all of the words that I think people would have a problem with to understand. Because I know one of the things I had going through all of this is trying to keep track of, what are these terms? Not only did I have to learn the money system, but I had to learn a new language because a lot of these terms are no longer in dictionaries. So I had to buy an old dictionary. This way I could have done it. So that, I think, was a big help to the reader. We then get into listing all the personal names instead of corporate names or company names. So we list them by name. If they had an occupation that was identifiable, which most of the time I got off of the Rivington Gazette, I have to go back and read it. Now, this time I want to read all of the proclamations by the king. It would be very interesting to do that. And the address and locality of their business, which is interesting. And when the first date appeared in the account books and when it last appeared. And the reason being, a lot of the people, a lot of the patriots took over New York City after the war, and a lot of these loyalists moved out. So a lot of people that were on list before are no longer on list. They're probably in St. John's, am I right? I guess. Okay, corporate names. We wanted to also get the names of various merchants, corporate names, address localities, and again, when they first appeared and last appeared in the books itself. But we will have a list. It goes on quite extensively. Here we also look at products, a lot of products. We try to break them down into the food groups, kitchenwares, personal services, and miscellaneous. A personal service, often you'll find in the account books, an individual who's going to work for this merchant, let's say put up new fences, paint his house, whatever, would get paid for it and would get a credit in the account books. So then he had that credit to work with and to purchase whatever he wanted. So here we'll have that for the reader as well. I also put down a colonial currency explanation and arithmetic. Okay, this is basically something for people that really have an interest in looking at what the currency values are, as I did, and to help make an better understanding of what are in the account books. This is only just a little sampling, but to give you just a little idea, you see the 1 guinea gold coin sterling is 21 shillings. That was the value of the 1 guinea itself. Or 1 pound, 1 shilling sterling money. The New York currency, which is the cheaper currency, has 37.333 shillings per coin, and the value there is 1 pound, 17 shillings, and 4 pence, which shows the inflated value of that particular coin. I knew you would be absolutely astonished when you saw that. I know I was when I first saw it. Here, bibliography, we put down all the books that we've been using. Most of them are the books that I own. Most of them, my wife is not reading. And it's something that it's nice to have because it makes you feel closer to the people and what they had to go through in those particular days. So I'm now going to turn it over, if you will, for any questions that you may have. It's about that time. Any questions? I mean, that was that good. Everybody understands everything.
The work that Frank has done is now available on the library's website. The document that he's created, which are the transcriptions, the custom glossary, and all of this other work, which he's just shown you little snapshots of, exceeds 500 pages worth of information. We've put it on so that it's completely searchable. So eventually people searching in Google for things related to this will jump into these documents, and they'll be available to other researchers. and who knows what other things they'll uncover now that he's generated this wealth of information for us.
Okay, yes, yes, sir.
Was Hamilton or blank find?
Was Hamilton all right? I'm sorry.
Blank find.
No, could you help me with that? I'm sorry, I'm not hearing properly. Hamilton? No, I don't think so. He was definitely for big government, but he was also in that mode where he generated the understanding that we needed a banking system. He generated an understanding of the currencies. He was probably, in my book, one of the most patriotic patriots we ever had, Hamilton. And yes, absolutely. Yeah, he was. I don't want him to take off currency. I like his picture where it is. I don't want to see something else on there. Yes. Anyone else, please? No. Yes, sir.
I haven't really figured this out yet, but it seems to me there's a very I haven't really figured this out yet, but isn't there a very simple arbitrage that should go on between London and
Yes.
New York?
There is the biggest arbitrages took place in London, where they were arbitraging silver. They for some reason wanted to make money getting rid of their own silver when there was a problem with the silver in the country. So, but the arbitrages work well because the margins of profit were very, very large. I would think you could probably arbitrage colonies, the various currencies, but the thing is, unlike today where you have instantaneous quotes of exchange rates, those days you would get an average exchange rate per month. You know, a lot of historians, economic historians, have gone back and they found what those individual days were. But there were variations enough if they had computers. Yeah, they could arbitrage and make money, a lot of money.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? I'm sure there's another question somewhere. No, I guess not. No? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.